皆さん、おはようございます。私、梅姨少と申します。よろしくお願いします。大家好，我是邵梅姨。今天很高兴能有这个机会来跟大家做一个小小的分享，请多多指教。Good morning, everyone. My name is Mei Shaw. It is my pleasure and honor to be here today to do a little bit of personal sharing. I hope that you enjoy the talk. All right, so here's the moment of truth. It's actually taken me years, if not my entire lifetime, to feel more or less comfortable with the three languages I just spoke. Because technically speaking, none of the three languages are considered my native tongue, for the reasons I'll explain later. But for now, I think it's still pretty early in the morning, so I decided to do a little bit of language babbling, first to wake you guys up. Are you guys up? And also just to give you a sense of how these three languages generally play out in my daily life. So here we go. Let's start with Chinese. Whenever I go to karaoke, almost 95% of the songs that I sing are in Mandarin Chinese. And of course, one of my favorite songs goes like this. 忘了是怎么开始，也许就是对你有一种感觉。Yes, I have to sing in Chinese to get that feel, okay? That feel, okay? But when it comes to English, that's the language that I use for argumentation, for debate, or wanting to get my point across. For example, this is usually how I talk. I'm sorry, so just to make sure I fully understand you, and no offense, because I could be totally wrong, so please just take everything with a grain of salt, okay? But if I could just use today to play devil's advocate for a little bit, and I do a lot of these crazy hand gestures, the Americans. But of course, when it comes to whining, wanting to make a small criticism in a cute way, we're trying to be a little bit more feminine, Japanese generally does the trick. For example, 本当でも今日はさ、あんまり時間がないからね。もしやってくれたら本当に嬉しいわ。お願いします。Sorry, I will not repeat that in English again, okay? So why is it that three different languages play out so differently in my life and speak to a particular part of myself? Well, without borrowing someone else's jargon or terminology, because that's what our academics usually do, for today, this very special occasion, TEDxWanChai, only for you, okay? I've decided to create a new term for myself. I would like to call it, myself, the in-between, or the in-betweener. So how have I become such a strange in-betweener? Since Teresa just taught us about the power of storytelling, I've decided to give you a little bit of storytelling myself. I was born in South Bend, Indiana, a small college town where my father used to be a university professor teaching history. Since my mother has always been a working mom, I naturally spent more time at my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Irvin's house, and naturally picked up English as my first native tongue, only that it wasn't my mother's tongue. And of course, my brother and I were the only two kids in town with that ugliest Asian bowl-cut hairstyle. Here's a proof, right? All your Asian Americans out there, you know what I'm talking about. At the age of 3, our family moved back to Taiwan. And because my family so adamantly believed in one thing, 你是中国人，怎么可以不说中文呢? If you're Chinese, how can you not know how to speak Chinese? So as a result, my parents sent me to Taiwanese kindergarten, elementary, and junior high school. Of course, time in the elementary school was carefree and easy, but by the time of junior high school, things were different. And because of that 9 years of education, I went from speaking only English to only Chinese. Worst of all, I forgot all my English. So pretty much because at the time, everyone's under this pressure to pass this horrifying high school entrance exam, pretty much by 8th grade, I spent all my time commuting between 3 places: my home, my school, and the tutorial centers, or the after-school school. My parents were deeply worried about the emptiness behind this kind of test-based education. And of course, they wanted to give me a healthier lifestyle. So by the middle of 9th grade, they came to me with a different option. They asked if I would like to be transferred to the American school in Taipei. American school? Are you saying that I don't have to worry about this entrance exam anymore? and I get to live out the colorful lifestyle of those people in 90210. That was my favorite show at the time. Of course, life did not turn out to be 90210. If anything, my English is so bad that I literally failed the entrance exam to the American school the first time. I actually had to start the 9th grade all over again because that's the only year when ESL classes were still offered. But very slowly indeed, the American school setting began to change me. It didn't just change the way I look, I dress, I talk, I think, I speak. It actually changed the way I began to see the world, especially the way I understand and relate to people, and the differences between them, and what caused those differences between them. From day one when I was in American school, I picked up one thing. As much as these kids look so smart and funny, articulate and confident, all those great things came out of a long period of cultivation and acquirement with abundant resources given behind. At the same time, I was always puzzled by one thing. At the end of the day, aren't we talking about the same 14 to 18-year-old teenage brats? Being the in-betweener who's gone to both systems, both schoolings, both cultures and traditions, I came to realize one thing, that essentially the differences between my Chinese school friends and my American school friends really did not lie in the people itself. Rather, it lied in the supporting environment and culture that they're from. And it is exactly that difference in the environment and culture that also determined why I have the privilege of going to the American school. That privilege at the time seemed to have come to me pretty easy, but it didn't come out of my own hands. It came out of two things. First, my foreign passport, US passport. Second of all, my parents' financial income. So as a high schooler who always liked to think a lot, for the longest time I was struggling with a few questions. What if at the time my parents simply did not have the money to put me to this expensive American high school? What now happens to my Chinese school friends who are still struggling with examination-based education? More importantly, how do I bridge the gap between the two? So at the end of the day, it was these set of questions that brought me to explore my Christian faith at the end of high school. I believe that God did hear my prayers, but he decided not to answer me right away. Instead, he put me on a journey, a very long journey, of constant relocation, transitions, and cultural integration for me to deepen my in-between identity, my perspective, and also for me to find the answers on my own. So for years of college, I went from Wellesley, Massachusetts, to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Then I went to Kyoto, Japan as my junior year abroad, then back to Philly. Sometimes I was regarded as American student studying in Japan. Sometimes I was a Taiwanese student studying in America. Post-college, I spent 1 year in Beijing and 1 year in Shanghai. At work, I was considered this expert in American language and culture. At home, though, I was just a Taiwanese person trying to explore the family and the cultural roots of my so-called Chinese motherland. 6 years of grad school, I spent 3 years in Cambridge, Mass., Harvard, and then 3 years in Tokyo. In class, I was seemingly this young, rising, bright scholar to be. But deep down, I severely question if any of such intellectual activities and exercises are really going to change the world. All those long years of moving abroad, transitioning, becoming a global nomad, indeed had deepened my quintessential in-between identity. Each relocation affirmed my original observation that in the end, it is not the people, but the environment, culture, and community that shapes each of us to become who we are today, the way we think, live, grow, and prosper. But the million-dollar question remains: how do we close the gap? So there came a pivotal moment of my life. The summer before I went back to Harvard for my second year of study, my father handed me a thick, handwritten, like that, memoir written by an old Chinese man. Go and have a look. Maybe you'll find a good inspiration for your dissertation topic. So on the plane back to Boston, I flipped through the memoir of this old man, and I was surprised to find that even at age 70, he was able to remember how to write the Japanese katakana characters that he was once forced to learn. The time was 1930s Northeast China, or the so-called Manchuria, under Japanese occupation. So the old man in the memoir depicted a fight that he had at school with a Japanese teacher who accused him of having erroneous ideas against the Japanese empire. The fight, which ended up a punch on his face, of course brought great humiliation to him, but at the same time, a great sense of commitment. 亡国之奴不能讲理，心存救国，必先立志. As I read further, I realized this commitment that this old man made at the time remained true for the rest of his life. And this commitment was nothing but to save the country. Years later, the son of the old man also wrote a memoir. As it turned out, the family had to flee to Taiwan as a result of the Chinese Civil War. And pages after pages in the memoir, the man described the constant agony that he felt as Taiwan, his home country, has always had its national identity and political legitimacy in question, even today. Near the end of the memoir, he wrote about the ultimate drive that determines all of his actions and commitments throughout the rest of his life. 我生命的变化都与国家的命运起伏息息相关，所以和国家建立了一份极为浓郁的感情。并因感恩而图报，这贯穿了我一生的思维与行事。This agony or pain over living as an in-betweener, whether it's politically, nationally, or culturally, drove these two men to seek dedication to one's country as their lifelong missions. Interestingly, the wife of the son, she also had the experience of living as an in-betweener, only that this time exist in the gender terms. 不是20世纪中国受西方影响后，女性接受高等教育的时代之一，因家庭制度的转型变成小家庭制，免受传统大家庭的束缚，婚姻亦能自主。我写此回忆录，主要就是想把我们这一代的职业妇女，从求学到就业，从结婚到生儿育女等生活各方面，如实的记录下来，作为一个大时代的个人小历史，也为现代妇女的公私两难，做一个小小的见证。So why did I call the reading of that old man's memoir a pivotal moment of my life? Because the fact is, the people that I just mentioned, they are my grandfather, my father, and my mother. They're my family. So from the day when I came across my grandfather's memoir, I came to feel this rippling effect of this in-between identity, fate, you might call it, that runs deep in my family. But if the story of any individual or family may speak for a slice of truth about the human world that we're living in, then I hope that this little sharing may serve as encouragement to you. Because I would like to say to you that in-between identity exists in you and all of you. If only you're willing to look deeper, because sometimes that in-between identity lives in disguise. The question is, how do we bridge the gap? That question still remains. From the day I asked that question in high school till now, I eventually came to find my answer in one biblical verse that I believe that God has consistently given me throughout my many years of long journey. From everyone who has been given much, much more will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. I've been given this privilege of living a life of a global nomad, the quintessential in-between. But this is not a privilege that was given to me easily. It was given to me for free, but I've decided I'm not going to put to waste. So in 2010, I decided it's time to put this in-between identity into something that empowers. I started my academic career at Shanghai Jiaotong University with a salary level that was actually much lower than the scholarship money that I used to receive from either Harvard or Japan. But I took the job anyway because I believe that the college students in China, especially for those who do not have the means to go abroad, deserve the chance of a quality education as well. Last year in January, I came to Hong Kong, started teaching at HKUST. I decided to forego the research tenure track position and become a faculty member in the teaching track. Because my heart and my soul go out to the one important thing that I believe truly matters. That is the development of gender education. And I want to spend every bit of my energy and time through this teaching track to fulfill that lifelong mission. You really don't have to be like me to live the life of a global nomad, to actually understand what it feels like to be caught between cultures, languages, and traditions, especially in a place like Hong Kong. Because you probably had changed schools before, picked up a new language, moved abroad temporarily for work or for study, or you might be thinking about doing so tomorrow. You may not have seen your own mother struggling between being a family woman and a career woman, but you or your daughter might have to face that challenge tomorrow. You may not have been a refugee yourself, but someone in your family probably has been an immigrant somewhere. Or you might be thinking about moving abroad, immigrating to another country, and raising your children to be the citizens of another nation tomorrow. For many of my students in Hong Kong, they're the first ones out of their entire family to have gone off to university. For many of my students in Shanghai, they're also the first ones out of the entire village, their entire hometown, to have gone off to a major top-tiered university in a major metropolitan city. The in-betweenness lives in all of us, if only we're willing to look deeper. So the question is, are you aware of it? What are you going to do with it? More importantly, how are you going to be that person who empowers? Thank you.